Yes, yes, yes. The buzz around the globe continues. Bee-A-Thon 2011. I'm your host, Ian Brady, and this segment is going to be simply outstanding. One of the reasons I wanted to show you is this T-shirt here. This is another thing that I'm involved with. I'm the creator of the Insect News Network. The Insect News Network is a deep dive into the world of cultural entomology. We take you into the world of insects beyond the creepy and the crawly, to the fun, the fascinating, the profound, and even the sublime. And on the back of this T-shirt, we have a wonderful quote by none other than Charles Darwin himself. He said one time, "I am dying by inches from having nobody to talk to about insects." So what's the solution to that? Well, we set up a 12-hour marathon to talk about insects. And my next guest is a gentleman who spent an entire career talking about insects with probably more people than anybody that I've come across. And it's not just because of his advocacy, it's his passion, his photography, and his international travels as well. Dr. Stephen Buchmann is the international ambassador for the North American Pollinator Protection Campaign. So as you are making notes throughout the day about honeybee and pollinator advocacy, write down those letters, NAPPC. It's one of the most important organizations advocating on behalf of our 6- and 8-legged friends. In addition, Dr. Buchmann is an adjunct professor at the University of Arizona, and he's also one of the board members of the Pollinator Partnership, which is right here in San Francisco. They're the outreach arm of the NAPPC. And Dr. Buchmann and I, our relationship goes back a couple of years, and so I'm very happy to welcome you to Bee-A-Thon 2011.
Hi, it's great to be here from baking hot Tucson, Arizona.
Baking hot, right, yeah. The bees are happy, though, in that weather, aren't they?
Oh, they are. Getting out and visiting a lot of flowers.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Now, we're going to take a nice deep dive into Dr. Buchmann's world, and we're going to kind of do it in two parts. So the first part I want to talk about is this advocacy, the policy making, the role of NAPPC, and how citizen science can really help amplify that message. So tell us about NAPPC, Doctor.
Sure. NAPPC, as we call it, the North American Pollinator Protection Campaign, is a grassroots organization. It's actually one of the projects of the Pollinator Partnership, which is the 501c3 nonprofit based in San Francisco. And we have an annual meeting every year. Actually, it's in October, usually mid to late October, in Washington, D.C., where we go and spend 3 or 4 days meeting, several hundred of us, working on task forces. We try to pick tasks that are doable. For example, right now we're really excited. We're working on something called the Highways Bee Act. We're trying to get pollinator-friendly language into a new authorization of the DOT Act that concerns highways. And why we're concerned about this is that we think, well, we've got really great bipartisan support for this, but we think we can get states and the feds to buy into less mowing, which means reducing their costs, and also by planting pollinator-friendly plants. So we have more food in the pantry, right, for honeybees, native bees, hummingbirds, butterflies, moths, all kinds of pollinators. So we're really excited about that. So a huge number of things that we do. We worked to fund the National Academy of Sciences study a few years ago that did the Status and Trends book, a 300-page book on the status of pollinators in Canada, U.S., and Mexico. We were involved with getting the bees and other insects on stamps a few years ago. So it's really neat. We also do pollinator
stamps. I love it.
We just had Pollinator Week, which was the last week.
Big one, yeah. National Pollinator Week is an annual week, and your organization was instrumental in getting it declared by Congress. It's June 20th through the 26th every year, and I hope the Bee-A-Thon and your garden show Citizen Science is going to help really broadcast that message into the future, because obviously a whole week dedicated to pollinators would really set the buzz around the world, don't you think?
Yeah, it was great fun this week. We had actually over 80 grassroots things happening, lectures, walks, beekeepers opening up their hives to the public. It was really a fantastic thing.
Awesome, and I understand that the White House has a bee, because of Michelle Obama's activities, there's a honeybee seven supers high, is that right? A honeybee hive?
There is, yeah. There's a really cool, visible Langstroth hive, very fancy Langstroth hive,
Pretty
on the
fancy.
White
You're
House.
showing off a little bit, don't you think?
Yeah, it's a fancy one. It's not like some of the beehives I see scattered around Arizona, which need a little bit of paint, you know.
Yeah, well, you're the White House, you can afford to go 7 supers high, and most of the beekeepers watching online will get a real kick out of that one. So
That's right.
now, I often tell people about pollination that to make it fun and really understandable, that it's brought to you by the letter B. For some inordinate reason, most of the pollinators have the letter B in their names: honeybee, bumblebee, beetle, hummingbird, bats. It goes right down the line. I understand you got some nice images to show to people. And again, Dr. Buchmann has traveled the world. He teaches classes in some of the most remote places in the world on how to do insect photography. So again, it's cultural entomology. It's this new digital era where we get to slow down the insect world. We get to blow it up to our scale and really, really analyze it. So it's allowing citizen science to happen at a scale that's never been before possible. And that's why YourGardenShow.com Citizen Science and the Great Sunflower Project are so important, because our platforms, our free online platforms, are very graphic and very media friendly. So Dr. Buchmann, tell us about some of these pictures you have.
Well, the first one I have is poking my head inside a honeybee colony, so the beekeepers will recognize that.
See what you're missing, folks? Okay, you sign up today, right? Stick your head inside a colony.
Actually, fortunately doesn't show my head, but it does show some worker honeybees. And they're great. A lot of things you can see when you look at bees up close. Most people don't realize that honeybees are one of the few bees in the world that have hairy eyes. So we don't really know what's going on, but they've got thousands of little hairs poking up as seedy from the compound eyes. So,
and I also often tell people that the legs of honeybees are among the most elegant structures in nature, don't you think?
They are. I like to consider them as almost like flying Swiss Army knives, because they've got little wonderful tools like antennal cleaners and a pollen press and all these things on their hind legs. So yeah, they go around with their little carpenter belts on all the time.
And when they jump into a flower, they have a special electromagnetism that actually tracks pollen to their bodies. Isn't that right?
Yeah, any object that flies through the air, whether it's a worker honeybee, a baseball, or a 747, picks up a strong electrostatic charge. So they become positively charged. Plants are quite literally and figuratively grounded, right? They can't get up and go on a date unless they're a prom corsage. So the bees have to come to them. And yeah, sometimes the pollen jumps these little air gaps. So electrostatics is passive. And the other thing that works for bees, all bees actually, the signature feature of bees is that they have branched hairs. Not like the single hairs on our head. They're more like a bird's feather. So all these little interstices, all these little nooks and crannies grab onto the pollen, help them collect it for food, but help them move it on to other plants, which is, as we all know, an incredible ecosystem service, responsible for about 35% of food we eat around the globe.
Quite amazing structures, and it's all designed for the propagation of plants. So let's take a look at some of that. What's the next picture you got to show us, Doctor?
The next one, I believe, is a big jolly bumblebee, Bombus sonoris from Arizona, and I think it's sitting on a thistle. Let me go through to my...
Oh, look at that, beautiful.
Yeah, so that's... Eastern beekeepers or Eastern naturalists would know this one as Bombus pennsylvanicus. That's how we know it scientifically, but I like to think it's a good species. So this is Bombus sonoris from the Sonoran Desert of Southern California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Sonora.
And how many species of bumblebee are in North America?
Depends on who you ask, but roughly 47.
Okay. And there's 3 right now that are endangered. Is that accurate?
Yeah, actually 4 or 5 of them are in pretty steep decline.
Okay.
When I was a grad student at UC Davis in Berkeley in the mid to late 70s, we had very common bumblebees, Bombus occidentalis, the western bee. Now when I go back for a visit, you just don't find that bee. So their ranges have constricted.
Okay, what's the next image?
Okay, the next one looks like pretty in pink. We have a dressed up sweat bee, which is
the sweat bees. Yeah,
green sweat bee with kind of a flashy yellow and black abdomen.
Look at that. What a stunning photo. That's a great one.
Yeah,
Those ones almost look like they were put together in a toy factory, don't you think?
I know, and yeah, no photoshopping actually, the real thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and sweat bees are one of those bees that kind of go unnoticed. They're a native pollinator. There's several dozen species, isn't that right?
Oh, there are lots. There are hundreds of species. In fact, gardeners will know and recognize some sweat bees. In fact, the genus Dialictus as little tiny blackish, maybe a hint of metallic, but they'll land on their arm and they'll wonder what's licking their sweat. So sweat bees live up to their name. They're after salts and perspiration. So gardeners find that out pretty early.
Yeah, and they don't sting much.
No, not bad at all.
And the next one?
Next one is really cute. It looks like it has old rabbit ear TV antennae, but this is what we call a long-horned bee. This is a male. The females don't have such long antennae, but this is in the genus Melastodes, and it's sitting on a little grass stem. Sometimes male bees are highly territorial. They fight by day, but often they form these little sleeping aggregations at night, wake up, have their coffee, and fight again over females the next one.
Like they do it in the old days.
Yeah,
So it's all for the gallantry of the fight, right? I get it.
Really charismatic bees, I think. Sometimes these antennae are 1 or 2 times the length of their body. Pretty neat.
So like sword fighting.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, okay. And then there's one more shot I think you wanted to shift.
Last one, people looking at it may think it's a wasp. It doesn't even look bee-like. Most of the bees in the world are very charismatic, sort of super fuzzy teddy bear-like bees. But this one is the genus Nomada, and we call them cuckoo bees, not because they're crazy, or maybe they're crazy like a fox, but they're kleptoparasites. So just like a cowbird in the bird world will sneak an egg into a nest, and the foster parent rears the kids. That's exactly what's happening here with bees. So 10 or more % of bees in the world, depending where you live, are cuckoo bees. So when the host female is away, one of these interlopers sneaks an egg into the nest.
How about that? So what's interesting, too, is that Carl von Frisch was the professor, the scientist back in the 50s and 60s who decoded the dance language of the honeybees. And he said that the world of the honeybee is like a magic well. The more you draw from it, the more there is to draw from. And I think after spending time with people like you, Doctor, you can say that just about all the little bee species. They're a pretty amazing, diverse, and colorful group of insects, don't you think?
They are. We've got 3,500 species of native ground and twig nesting bees in the United States, about 6,000 in North America, and around the world, about 20,000. But taxonomists and bee scientists are discovering new ones all the time. So who knows? When we're done, there might be 30,000 or so bee species in the world. We just don't know the exact number.
I like to think of the bees and some of the other pollinators as symphony conductors. And they really keep the symphony going of life on land. And what's neat about this, I'm going to take the last few minutes of our chat to tell the world about how I got to know Dr. Buchmann. I went on this sort of Indiana Jones adventure down to Mexico into the Yucatan to study a very special bee, what I consider to be the hallmark of cultural entomology in the entire world. And it has to do with what's known as the sacred Mayan honeybee. Doctor, could you tell them a little bit about Melipona beechii?
Yeah, it's an incredible bee. I've worked in the Yucatan for about 20 years, and this is my vote for the tastiest honey in the world.
I agree. I second that vote.
Yeah, just hits you. You know, it's incredible. But these bees live in smaller colonies than honeybees. You might have 500, maybe in a really big colony, 1,000. About the same size, about an inch long, like a honeybee. But they live in hollow logs, and the Maya, starting with the ancient Maya at least 2,500 years ago, would go out into the forest, fell trees, and bring sections of the trunk back. They call them jabones. And they keep them in little A-frame shelters. And there are lots of amazing bee ceremonies. The bees are really special. They pollinate their dooryard gardens, which are raised gardens to keep them away from the attacks of leafcutter bees, or I'm sorry, leafcutter ants. Apologies to Mark Moffat, okay, the ATA ants.
Yeah.
So they're incredible bees, and they're the main pollinators of the rainforest trees in that area. And they just make this exquisite honey. You can go to the
vanilla
ruins.
Beans too, right? Don't they pollinate vanilla beans?
They do.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what's interesting about these M. beechii, the reason they're the pinnacle of cultural entomology too, is because they hold a revered position in the Mayan culture. And later in the broadcast, later on the Bee-A-Thon in the evening hours, I'm going to get into the mythology of honeybees. That's one of my favorite topics. I've got some stunning images to show, and this is how I first connected with Dr. Buchmann. I was on this trip, and I met this woman, and we were traveling together, and we started exchanging emails, and I met some of the people that Dr. Buchmann had supported in the conservation of these sacred honeybees. And then I came upon the Mayan codices. Now, as you might know, the Mayans were some of the most advanced cultures in history. They were the only culture in the Western Hemisphere that had a written glyph language, and they had several thousand books that disappeared of their history, that some of them survived. One of them is called the Mayan Codex. And in this Mayan Codex, the entire 20-day cycle of how to literally worship these bees. Isn't that right, Doctor?
Yeah, there were thousands of these screenfold books, the codices, and they were all destroyed during the Spanish conquest. By the luck of the draw, 4 of them survived. Dresden Codex, the Madrid Codex is probably the most famous. It's in Madrid, Spain, and the Anthropology Museum. But yeah, there were thousands of these glyphs that mention Amus and Cobb, the bee god, and incredible language. Only about 80% of these have been translated by ethnographers. But the language is incredible. They talk about the eggs floating on the sour, sweet liquid, and they show Mayan deities dividing a parent colony into daughter colonies. So they were very, very advanced in their bee craft. And I'm delighted that you're showing.
And the Mayans worship the gods, and the gods worship the bees. That's kind of how it goes. And I believe that they translated as honey is called the sweat of the sun. They're worshipped as some of the only solar divine creatures on planet. So really what we start to step into is this very nuanced, very profound relationship between humans and the source of their culture, the source of their vitality, and it just so happens has to do with honeybees. Stingless honeybees, no less. These bees have no stingers. We forgot to mention that. They're the most docile.
Defenseless.
Yeah, they're totally defenseless. They sit at the front of the hive and they kind of look out at you, not like anything else. And so there's all these conservation problems going on with deforestation and Africanized Western bees. But the good part is we have someone like Dr. Buchmann and NAPPC advocating on their behalf. So I hope we'll talk some more about that some other time. Actually, Dr. Buchmann has a video that will show about these beautiful honeybees. But in the meantime, Doctor, how can people learn more about the Highway Bee Act, Pollinator Partnership, and your work with NAPPC?
Right. Well, all you need to do, it's a very simple website to remember. It's just pollinator.org. You can go there, and we've got great information in French, English, and Spanish. We have eco-regional planting guides, which are fantastic for gardeners. They can just put in their zip code and instantly get planting lists, really beautiful PDFs. Instructions on planting for pollinators, to plant in clumps, what to use, bee houses. You know, we didn't talk about
bees. There you go. I love it.
Little bee
that's
house.
for native bees right there. That's not for honeybees. That's for little native bees. Mason bees.
You can take scrap lumber and drill holes, you know, about soda straw size, and leafcutter and mason bees will move in. So we've got information about this on our website. Other great resources online are obviously the Great Sunflower Project and the folks at Xerxes. So there are really some incredible things online that gardeners can use.
Well, I hope at some point in the near future, Doctor, we can take a deeper dive about how some of your NAPPC and pollinator partner initiatives can mesh with our citizen science platform at yourgardenshow.com. And do me a favor, if you talk to Mr. Moffat, let him know that we mentioned his ants, but this show is about the Bee-A-Thons. Maybe we'll do an Anth-A-Thon next time and have him on today. All right, Dr. Buchmann, onwards and upwards. Good luck with all the work, and we look forward to supporting you in the future. And we're going to move right on to part 10 of the Bee-A-Thon in just a minute. Thanks for being with us, Doctor.
Thanks, Emma.